Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Inversion? Inversion is a full-priced, multi-format, third-person shooter release from Namco Bandai and developed by Saber Interactive. These are the guys that brought you Time Shift, which was not exactly great, Will Rock, which was not amazing either, and they worked on the campaign for Halo Anniversary Edition. I believe they're a Russian studio, if I recall correctly, and now they have this third-person shooter with gravity elements called Inversion, and their big tagline is turn your world upside down and stuff like that, so we shall see how that turns out. Now, as with all multi-format releases, we should always check the options menu. Why? It should be fairly obvious, because a lot of ports are really bad. Before I go on, though, does this look a lot like Mass Effect to you? It really does. I think this is actually the same font that is used in the menu screen for Mass Effect. I knew it looked familiar from somewhere, and I've only just now clicked onto where it came from. Oh, well, never mind. There's only a limited number of fonts in the world. So, gameplay options pretty good. You can turn your hints on and off, subtitles, and of course you can disable auto-aim, which is good. Vibration does not apply to mice, thankfully. Video options are fairly reasonable. There's a lot of stuff here. You've got stuff like edge, anti-aliasing. You can customize your texture quality, debris, ambient occlusion, stuff like that. So, ambient occlusion, generally speaking, is a big FPS hog for a lot of guys that don't have high-end graphics cards, so you might want to turn that one off. It's good that this is all available. That's good. That's a good options menu, but it is missing VSync. Now, VSync can cause screen tearing sometimes if it's turned off. I haven't experienced this, but I've heard that a number of people on the Steam forums have been suffering from this problem. You can force VSync via the use of your ATI or NVIDIA control panel, and that should be recommended for people that are suffering that issue. Now, this is important. Audio-wise, you can turn the voice chat off in multiplayer. Thank God for that. You can even actually change your input device. This is really unusual. I actually haven't seen a game which allows you to use multiple mics and audio devices within it like this for the input, so that's pretty awesome. I think you can probably do it via the Steam interface, but built into a game on its own, quite nice. We're going to, needless to say, turn all of this off. Now, as much as I'd like to show you multiplayer, it's very, very difficult to get a game of it. It's not a very popular game, so finding a game is tricky. If I do manage to get a game at some point in the future, I'll make a separate multiplayer video for this title. It's a bit annoying, really, because the multiplayer modes look pretty damn varied and interesting. Controls, you can rebind these, and you probably should, I think, because mini zoom is what you would expect to be on the right mouse button. They've actually put grav link on that, which is kind of weird. I've got used to it now, but it's not intuitive. Not initially, anyway, so something you might want to consider right there. Aside from that, though, you can rebind, and you can also set up with a 360 pad or controller of your choice. Alright, so campaign is available in single player or in online co-op, which seems like it would be a bit of fun. We're going to go single player for the moment, and I've gone past the first hour or so of the game, because as with a lot of games like this, it is extremely linear, and it forces you through a bunch of tutorial segments that are not really all that interesting. So, let us resume the campaign, shall we? Loading times on the game are not too shabby, I have to say, which is always nice to see. They're not exactly amazing, but they're not too bad. And once you get into the game, you're not going to be facing an awful lot of loading screens either. Alright, welcome to Gears of War. I mean, Inversion. This game really, really wants to be Gears of War. Good God. But I guess if you're going to ape a third-person shooter, then you might as well ape a really popular one. Alright, so movement is pretty standard, as you might imagine. W, A, S, and D. You can go into cover using space, and you can also vault over cover, as you might imagine. Although, there's a bunch of stuff that you would think you'd be able to get into cover behind, but you can't. Like this, for instance. Nope, can't get into cover there. Can't get into cover here. I can only kind of roll at it. So, only certain environment objects allow you to go into cover. And sometimes you run into stuff that you think should be cover, like maybe this, but it only works here. I can stay in cover here, but I can't stay in cover here either, which is a little bit janky to say the least. Not exactly what I'd class as ideal. Alright, so we're going to hit tab in order to find where exactly we're supposed to be going. At least that was the plan at any rate. Usually it shows up. There it is. There we go. It only flashes it up for a fraction of a second, and cutscenes, cutscenes, cutscenes. Good thing is, this game has a lot of cutscenes. That's not a good thing, that's a bad thing. The game allows you to skip every cutscene except for the first 5 minutes or so at the intro of the game. It really requires that for whatever reason, but you can skip everything else, which is good, because let's just put it this way. The game does not have a strong storyline by any stretch of the imagination. Alright, grenades, there we go. Always good for clearing out cover. Speaking of cover, an awful lot of cover in the game actually takes damage. You can more often than not actually collapse stuff, and you can also use something called the grav link in order to cause a few problems for the enemy. So if I were to use my grav link here, I can... Or if I aimed it properly, let's try it again. If I use my grav link there, it creates a localized low-gravity field, which allows you to cause enemies to float, which is really quite funny at times. I want to try and toss a grenade down the hole if possible. Now, of course, you can aim with it. Did that do it? No, not quite. Need to get just a little bit closer. Grenades are sadly not on a separate key, so... I'm tossing it down the wrong hole, aren't I? Yes, very clearly. It should be going down here. There we go. Now, you do die pretty fast in this game, so it's fairly sensible to try and stay in cover pretty much all the time. Running at the enemy is not going to get you very far. Weapons-wise, the shotgun feels really good. It's a seriously meaty weapon with crazy range, and it's very, very powerful with a nice spread, so certainly worth doing. We'll just use our grav link to try and float them out there, but that was a very, very small gravity field there, so we could try something a little bit better. Oh, Lord! Oh, God. Let's get out of the way. Now, floating enemies can attack you, although they do every now and again have problems doing so. But the gravity mechanic is... It's difficult to say whether or not it's a gimmick or not, because when I first got my grav link, I found I just didn't have to use it, really. And even in combat like this, you can play it like a straight-up third-person shooter, and you will find that it is competent in pretty much every way. It just doesn't excel in any way. Like, if you were to look at Gears of War as a standard, for instance, and say, well, you know, is the shooting better? Are the cover mechanics better? Then you'll probably find that the answer is most likely no. But it's certainly competent at what it does. I would say that it's just above average. It is good. It is not great. Right, let's make our way through here. Now, those of you who are bothered by FOV with third-person games may suffer just a little bit here. I think the FOV is a little bit narrow. I mean, I'm not talking Resident Evil 5 level of narrow here, but even I, who usually doesn't get affected by FOV in third-person games, was after a while getting just a little bit nauseous and disorientated, so that could be a problem for some of you. It does have some pretty nice visuals, honestly, and it's not an ugly game by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a great-looking game either, but I'd certainly say it's above average. Texture quality in the walls, I mean, if you look at that, that's actually pretty good. Right? That's a surprisingly good texture quality on even some of these doodads that really don't require an awful lot of work on them. Character texture work is pretty good. The backgrounds are always pretty impressive. You've got some crazy stuff like buildings floating in midair. They've got a nice post-apocalyptic environment going on. It's nothing special, I would say. It's not like you're going to see a lot of really unusual stuff, except for the whole gravity thing. But it works well, and it looks good, and it shows an obvious amount of talent and competence. It just doesn't show a huge amount of aesthetic creativity. I guess you can't necessarily expect the spark of imagination from every studio, and what they seem to have created here is pretty solid. I'm still umming and ahhing over whether or not the whole gravity thing is a gimmick. There's also something called actual inversion, yeah, where you're able to invert the level. Oh, hello. Some interesting stuff going on here. Yes, this happens an awful lot. Alright, are we in... Oh, looks like we are indeed in a zero-gravity part. I've never actually seen this before. I've heard of it. I'm interested to see how this actually controls. That's exactly what it is. Alright, so... This is actually kind of neat. You can grab onto things as you float around the place. You press space in order to head in a particular direction. Double tap W to go over the other side of an object. I want to see how the cover system actually works out here. Will it end up being any good, more to the point? Tap space, that should make me float in this direction. This is a pretty neat feature, honestly. Wow, you can even kind of do backflips. You can do zero-G dodges. That's cool. I hope that there's more of this in the game, although from what I've heard, they don't use it all that often. It could be considered a little bit tricky to get the hang of at first, but, you know, at least they're trying something. I mean, aside from the whole ability to make people float out of cover and these contrived parts where it's like, use the grav link to move stuff out of your way, otherwise you can't proceed. The game doesn't really do an awful lot different. But that's kind of neat. Shame I didn't get to do any combat there, but I imagine I'll get to do that a little bit later on. And everything that I see so far points to this game being competent in pretty much every area with the occasional spark of brilliance, but not necessarily enough to justify its price tag. We're talking about a full-price game release here, so I think these days on PC, a lot of people expect more out of their full-priced games, and they are more than willing to wait for sales otherwise. In this case, this seems like perfect sale fodder. I would happily buy this game 50% off. I don't think I'd feel great if I bought it for full price. The campaign's about 7 to 8 hours in length, and they use the gravity inversion later on, so I'm told, in order to kind of extend the amount of time you spend in one level. Because, of course, you can use the entire level. Why design an entire level when you only get to use kind of one part of it? If they flip things around, then you're able to walk on the walls, walk on the ceiling, and suddenly you've got an entirely new level within the level. Which is a pretty damn smart way of designing things, honestly. I don't want to see any more of that cutscene. As I said, there are a lot of cutscenes in this game. The voice acting is not its strong point, and the characters are quite frankly boring as sin. Thankfully, what I will say is your AI partner keeps things moving quite nicely. It's actually competent, which was fairly surprising. He will use his gravity link to get people out of cover. He shoots fairly accurately. He doesn't get himself killed. He doesn't get in the way. Good. That's what I like to see. Alright, those are friendly. Let's not kill them. There we go. You can see there the AI partner actually used the gravity link in order to get that guy out of cover. I have a sniper rifle at the moment, which I can zoom in and out of. The sniper rifle feels good. I think the only weapon that doesn't feel good is actually the default assault rifle. It feels just a little bit like a pea shooter, but it does have this big blade on the end that you can stab with. Once again, really, really wants to be Gears of War so badly. Aside from that, though, the shotgun feels awesome. I'm a huge fan of the shotgun. Is he friendly? I'm going to go with probably not. Send some gravity nonsense their way. What you can also do is use the... anything that's in a low-gravity field you can also pick up as long as it's close by and hurl it at the enemy. But the system is not exactly what I call fluid. It's nice that you can do it, but it would just be nice to have a button that would just allow you to grab something instantly. As it turns out, you just don't have that. Uh-oh. Not friendly. Yep, we shall take him out. Thank you very much. Shouldn't be too tricky to do. Down you go. Not a problem. One of the worst snipers of all time. Actually, might just be able to toss a grenade over there, which might be quite amusing. Sup? I love the way the enemies actually float around when you do that. I think that this game's got potential for laughs, especially since they actually have gravity modes in multiplayer, like the ability to invert the level as a kill streak and stuff like that. That seems like it would be fun. I think that would lead to some pretty awesome moments, all things considered. The single player has those moments every now and again. Just stupid stuff, enemies kind of floating past the window in the middle of a fight, things like that. It's good. It's good. It's good laugh there. I'm enjoying my time with the game so far. Enemy variety is quite nice. I've got to say, actually, I really like the aesthetic design on them as well. I mean, you look like a generic-ass space marine, but these guys, they've got kind of tribal war paint on them. They very much build their armor out of scrap metal, so they actually give me this orc vibe from Warhammer 40,000. I mean, tell me that doesn't kind of remind you of an orcish battlesuit mega armor or something along those lines. It kind of does. There are a fairly reasonable number of boss fights as well. I think this is actually the third boss fight that I've done thus far, so that's not too shabby. He doesn't take any damage from that, so let's just get down there and out of the way. Okay, it's not going to let me do that. I guess do I have to stay up here? No, no. F is to vault down. Okay, never mind. Yeah, well, that's a tall order, isn't it? Have some grenades. Maybe that will work. I'm thinking maybe I can throw something at him. I've got some ideas about throwing cars, if possible. I can... No. Ah, yeah, let's just stay in cover for the moment. Not going as well as I had hoped. There you go. Have some more grenades. I think actually it's just grenades. You know, this once again kind of gets back to the problem that I was talking about in the first place, which is like using the gravity thing really isn't actually all that necessary. I'd love to. I don't actually have any more grenades to toss, but it looks like the AI partner might have done that for me, so hey, not bad. Using my sniper rifle to do essentially nothing whatsoever. Maybe I can get behind him. Yeah, I'd love to. Are there any more grenades around here? Oh, there we go. There's one. Well, it seems like there is only one way to beat this boss. And, you know, this, I think, comes back to what I was saying about gravity. It's like, why couldn't we have used some neat gravity stuff, picked up cars, thrown them at the enemy? You can pick up cars, supposedly, but it certainly won't float with that. Maybe you get to upgrade that later on. Maybe that's why it doesn't do it, but still. I think that there's a missed opportunity in a lot of these boss fights to actually utilize your gravity for good. The first boss fight actually had some really cool gravity stuff. You could toss containers full of gasoline at your opponent, blow it up. Even, you know, actually one really cool thing I noticed, when you toss it, the gasoline actually comes out, but if it's in a low gravity field, it kind of balls up like there would be zero gravity. So you've got this big thing of flammable fluid that you can use like a giant grenade that you can toss in the direction of your enemies, which is pretty awesome, honestly. This game maybe gets a little bit of a bad rap. It's not done very well in reviews whatsoever, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think if you're going to fawn over games like Gears of War and then just ignore this, which does occasionally have interesting mechanics going on, although the gameplay is very, very similar, then I have to ask, well, you know, what's so good about Gears of War that is not happening in this game? I think maybe Gears of War is a tighter game. It's obviously a more established franchise. One might arguably say it's a better looking game, but honestly, I mean, the texture quality, certainly on the PC version of this, is really, really good. So I guess I prefer playing 90 frames a second Inversion in 1080p rather than 30 frames a second Gears of War 3 in 720p. What can I say? Maybe I'm a little bit of an elitist like that, but you know what? I like my gaming to be in 2012 rather than 2007. I think this game is definitely sale fodder. If you happen to have a console, of course, you could rent it. Not really an option on PC, sadly, but there's enough laughs, there's enough good gameplay in it to actually warrant at least giving it a shot if you're a fan of third-person shooters. They could have done so much more with the gravity, certainly. I'm hoping later on in the game to see a lot more imaginative stuff going on with it, but aside from that, it's a solid third-person shooter with a fun gimmick and decent design. Can't really complain about that too much. I just wouldn't necessarily spend the full price on it. Wait for it to be 50% off, then you might want to consider it, certainly. Anyway, I'll try and bring you a multiplayer video when it's actually possible to do so. The multiplayer modes are many and varied. You'll also notice that some of these enemies also have grav links, which makes them particularly dangerous. You can go floaty, thank you very much. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh, there we go. Oh, that's a grenade! No, don't take cover there. Here's one thing I don't like, by the way. God, that looks like Mass Effect so much. This was the same in Mass Effect games, actually, or any third-person cover-based shooter. When you run, I do not want to automatically stick into cover. I don't want my cover button and my run button to be on the same one, because I'm trying to run away from the enemy. Well, what do you think's going to happen? Yeah, not ideal. Alright, let's see what we can do about grabbing this, shall we? So remember what the key actually is in order to grab it. Do I need energy? Have I got energy? Yeah. There we go. I want to grab this so I can actually toss it around and show you it, but it doesn't seem to be working at the moment. Let me just recheck the controls. I think I may have forgotten how to do it. It requires it to do it so little that, yeah, manipulation is Q. I thought it was. But it's not allowing me to do that just yet. I know I've definitely run out of ammo now, but let's get the sniper rifle out and do a little bit of damage, and then I'll try and just show you tossing a few objects around, because, you know, that's a fun part of the game that is underutilized, at least in the first couple of hours of it. Alright, so what else have we got? Anyways, there. Nope, that looks friendly, or at least it was. A lot of cars exploding, a lot of terrain damage and things like that, and a lot of crazy stuff floating around the place. It's a very busy environment, which is fun. I like that, certainly. There we go. Decent amounts of battle chatter as well. As again, you know, no particularly interesting characters involved in it, but still. Alright, ooh, there we go. Alright, let me just get this in the air and see if I can grab it. It seems like you can only grab certain objects, which is a little unfortunate. Trying my best to do that, and it's not letting me. Oh, well, never mind. Anyway, the game is reasonable. It honestly is, so you might want to check it out when it goes on sale. Currently available on Steam. I believe it is just a Steam game in general, wherever you buy it from, but you can also purchase it from Gamersgate. You get stuff like refunds and blue coins and things like that, so not a terrible idea, all things considered. Decent job by Saber Interactive, though. I hope they keep making games. I mean, they've made a solid title with a nice little gimmick. Maybe they will strike gold at some point. And the PC port is, for the most part, good, with the... God damn it, really? With the exception of the fact that VSync is not available, and the fact that it also uses the peer-to-peer lobby. There's, like, no server browser or anything like that, which makes things rather awkward when you've got, like, 8 or 9 playlists to look through. It's really hard to actually find a game anywhere as a result of that. It would be nice to have a server browser. It's like, all right, there's these games available, I can go jump into that, but not bad, actually. Not bad at all. My name's been Totalbiscuit, taking a look at Inversion, currently available on Steam, Gamersgate, and all popular digital distribution platforms, as well as 360 and PlayStation 3. I'll see you next time.